My name is Grant Browning, and I'm the founder of one of Toronto's largest Caribbean media groups. With over 20 years of branding and marketing, you can guarantee that I've met some pretty amazing people. My biggest pet peeve is hearing people refer to successful entrepreneurs as overnight successes. But the truth is, there are no overnight successes, just entrepreneurs. Real entrepreneurs with big dreams and a desire to make a difference. They're willing to overcome all the odds just for a chance to taste success. That's exactly what this show is about. Business, success, strategies, the dreams, the struggles, and the victories. We're here to pack a hard punch and knock our dreams into reality by bringing you real stories and experiences right here on The Gloves Are Off. Welcome to another edition of The Gloves Are Off, and man, it feels good to be back. I am the CEO and founder of Carib 101 Media Group, and you are here with The Gloves Are Off, and I have an amazing and very special guest today. If you are an entrepreneur, you're going to want to make sure that you keep it locked and listen, because we're actually talking about something that is crucial to every entrepreneur. I have Dr. Sachin Patel, who is here from Mississauga, Ontario. He is a philanthropist, a functional medicine practice success coach. That is a tongue twister. International speaker, author, and the founder of the Living Proof Institute, which is practiced both here in Mississauga and in Cincinnati as well. Dr. Patel, he's got so much stuff that I had to get 5 pages going here. His philosophy is the doctor of the future is the patient, and he's actively doing whatever it takes to keep people out of the medical system and empower them through education, self-care, and remapping, sorry. I don't even have my glasses on. Remapping their mindset. So thank you very much for being a guest. I hope you guys tune in for the whole thing. We have an hour of jam-packed information for you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I've been looking forward to this.
Me too. I'm excited to share. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And I know we had an initial conversation, and I learned so much just within the last 10 minutes. So guys, make sure you keep it locked. So Dr. Patel, why don't we first talk about how you got started in this?
Well, I'll keep it short so we can focus on the content. And please call me Sachin. So I just want to kind of lose the titles. I find titles to be very limiting, and I find them to be something that confines us to pre-existing definitions. So
wow.
I prefer to be free from titles. We're all equals because we all have the equal capability to heal ourselves, regenerate our tissues, and become equally responsible for our health. Our current system is broken because of titles. It's because we as patients feel that we have to see someone with titles and someone with certifications and somebody with degrees on their wall to get better. And that's the mistake that we make, because what we really need is to become our own best doctors. So everyone watching this is really their own best doctor. And so I'll just kind of start with that I don't like titles, and I don't like the confinement and the restriction that they offer. And, it allows me to speak more freely as well.
For sure,
right?
For sure.
So, I started off originally as a chiropractor, still bleed chiropractic. And chiropractic is probably one of the most misunderstood forms of healthcare. Okay. It's actually a lifestyle. It's not a procedure. It's delivered in our healthcare system as a procedure. You go in, you get a procedure done, and you leave. Where the true meaning of chiropractic is actually founded in 3 important things: how we move, how we think, and how we eat. And so you don't get that when you go see your typical chiropractor, because that's not what the system defines as chiropractic. We have 2 different operating definitions. So people always ask me, how did you as a chiropractor get into this type of healthcare, which is functional medicine? And really it's an extension of what we believe as holistic practitioners, that every chronic disease has a root cause. Every chronic disease has something that's driving it, whether it's an environment or a behavior or a thought process or a ritual or a habit or a nutritional strategy. Our body can only create what it's being told to create, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the amazing thing about our bodies, is that what makes them so amazing is they have this just outstanding ability to create the reality that we choose. But if we don't know what drives that creation, then we can't influence it or change it. So I started off in a sports-based clinic, and I was working with athletes, professional athletes, Olympic athletes. I had gold medalists and silver medalists that I was working with. Athletes would fly out from all over the world to come see me. So I thought I had my dream job, and I was working as an associate at the time. And my boss, interestingly enough, I'll bring this up. I think it's quite entertaining. She at the time, prior to that, had frozen on live television. So we were doing some great work, and we had an opportunity to be on television. And she denied the opportunity and then offered it and passed it on to me. Okay. And so I was 2 years out of school, and I'm like, okay, I'll do it. This is pretty cool. Like, I can be on television, be on the news. And as a result of that report, which was about elbow pain, mind you, we had about 80 people call the office, and only one of those people actually had elbow pain. And that was due to her rheumatoid arthritis. We had all these people call in who were just extremely unwell. Things like MS, things like chronic fatigue syndrome, chronic autoimmune conditions that were just debilitating. So on one side of our waiting room, we had athletes, the healthiest people in our community, and then we had these really, really unwell people in wheelchairs and walkers and stuff like that coming in, and I was like, I had no idea how to fix them. And it was like a punch in the stomach, because the people who really needed you to help, you couldn't help them, right? And so, I just felt really gutted as a practitioner. Your patients are like your children. So it's like that gutting feeling when you can't help somebody that you really love and care about. And, I try to be honest with them and let them know, listen, I don't know how to manage this. I don't know how to treat this. You've seen every specialist. The average person had seen 7 different people at that point, had tried 5 or 6 different medications to manage their problem. And what I realized was that I couldn't help them, but it was my then obligation to learn how to help these individuals, because I truly believed that something could be done. And that's when I learned about functional medicine. And I took a training course through Dr. Ron Grisanti called Functional Medicine University, and I started applying it to myself. And it changed my life. I used to have chronic fatigue, chronic pain, joint stiffness, achiness. I had acne all over my back. So I had all these health issues that were affecting me and not allowing me to live my best life. And I just thought that was how life was going to be for me, because I'd always experienced these things. And as a result of making these fundamental changes and changing my belief system to realizing that I can create the reality I choose, I essentially then use my body as a vehicle to create a whole new reality for me and the people around me. And so after I learned about functional medicine, the first thing I did was give up gluten. That was, for me, one of the biggest contributors to many of my chronic issues.
So rice and bread and stuff like that?
Mainly wheat.
Okay.
Gluten is found in all grains. So ideally, if people are listening to this and they want to really step it up, they can go completely grain-free, which sounds like, just like witchery to a lot of people, because we're so used to being peddled this idea that we need to eat grains to be healthy. And of course, the grain industry wants you to think this.
I like that thing peddled.
Well, yeah. And so we're usually, told, misinformation because of corporate interest in many cases, right? And it's quite unfortunate. But for me, that was one of the biggest things. Growing up Indian, vegetarian, you essentially are a grainitarian. You're not a vegetarian.
Yeah, rice is a big thing.
So, rice and wheat and, grains were just a huge staple, and lentils were a big staple in our diet. And so by giving that up and, finding alternatives, I found that made a huge difference. My stiffness, my fatigue, all those things started disappearing. And so, as it started helping me, I started giving out surveys to my patients, my then chiropractic patients, and I realized that many of them were dealing with many chronic health issues that they had never really brought to my attention, because they were coming in for structural care. So they wouldn't think, if my shoulder is bothering me or my back is bothering me, that they should tell me about, some of their digestive problems. They didn't really connect the two. And so by surveying them, I realized that I already had an active base of patients who needed functional medicine in my chiropractic office. And so I started exploring that, and then, I just got deeper and deeper, and then I started my own practice in 2006, and, really, in 2011, I started my own practice, and now we, train practitioners all over the world on how to implement functional medicine into their communities. So as you mentioned, we've got an office in Cincinnati. That's where the original office started, and my wife and I moved back a few years ago to Toronto. That's where we're from. We decided to open up an office here. And now we've got a team of practitioners and amazing people that take care of our patients.
Now, you mentioned something that kind of caught my attention, because I know that also in your bio, it says that you told me earlier you have 100 practitioners that you're coaching that's under you, and these are normal doctors, correct?
Yep, it's a combination of medical doctors, chiropractors,
Yeah,
naturopaths, acupuncturists, anyone who is a primary care health provider who has seen the limitations of their modalities that they're offering and is looking for a whole new spectrum of offerings for their patients and a whole new opportunity, really, to help their clients. Because what we learn in school is great, it's fantastic, it provides us the foundation, but that information, what we have to realize is, think of your computer, right? If you're using the same computer that you used when you graduated high school, right, you'd probably be pretty far behind the times.
Commodore 64.
Right? And that's what I had too. So you'd be pretty far behind the times. Now, the same level of advancement that's taken place in electronic technology has taken place in healthcare.
Gotcha.
It just isn't being delivered to the average person because it takes about 17 years for groundbreaking research to actually make it into mainstream healthcare. So it's a very slow-moving ship. If we came out with a cure for cancer today, there would be 17 years worth of people dying of that same cancer, of that very curable solution or disease, because we wouldn't be implementing it into mainstream medicine until then.
Now, so going on that, you were talking about how the body can actually cure itself naturally. How is that perceived with doctors? Because doctors are like a lot of, you go to the doctor, they give you a prescription usually, right? Because they try and mask the symptoms instead of trying to fix it. How is that perceived with you being a coach with doctors? Like, is it like is there a resistance at all with them?
No, I mean, they seek me out, right?
Okay, gotcha.
They've already come to that realization. They've already come to the light that says, hey, I've been practicing for 10 years and most of my patients are worse because of seeing me.
For sure.
They've come to that realization, and they also come to the realization that if my own wife or mother or father was sick, I would not give them the same intervention as I'm giving my patients. And so it's kind of this self-awakening that takes place, but now they need to know how to turn it into a business, because that's the challenge that many of them are going to face, because the work that we do is not covered by insurance, right? And not because it doesn't work, but because insurance is set up to be a reactive model, right? So, just like think about your car, right? Your insurance doesn't pay for a car wash. They'll pay if your bumper gets ripped off, but they're not going to pay for a car wash.
For sure.
So our healthcare system is not going to pay to prevent a problem, because it feeds off the fact that you have a problem. Right?
But they sell you that they're taking care of you.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing. The way people are getting sick has changed, so the way we approach their health has to change as well. And so the system was designed for mainly acute interventions. So a lot of the treatments that people are given are very short-sighted, because medicine was invented for life or death scenarios, right? And now we're using that same paradigm of healthcare for acute illnesses. Right? Now, if something happens and somebody breaks their leg, don't take them to the health food store. Like, reset the bone, put a splint on it, or do the surgery that's necessary. But we have to realize where that system is limited, right? If somebody has pain, we have to always go for the source of the pain. Where is it coming from? We have to assume that the body's doing something right instead of something wrong. And I think every doctor believes in the body's ability to heal. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. The body built itself, and it's constantly rebuilding itself. So that's something that is ever present.
Make sure you keep it locked. We got to take a quick break, and we're only getting started, and I feel like we don't even need a break right now because we're on a roll. But we'll be right back. We'll be right back.
You know your purpose, you know your function, because the function dictates the purpose. It's not talking about what color this thing is. Life is about a function. And only when you function do you see purpose. This is where we live, just here. What we think. We miss the human when we just focus on the black of the hand or the white of the palm. But my goal in life is to get people to understand your function. Let them feel their love. Let them know you. Let them know your struggle. So when we talk about community, it's talking about coming together, unity.
This holiday season, be sure to pick up your copy of the Toronto Caribbean newspaper and check out all the specials from local businesses right here in our community. Help build a bigger, better, and stronger community with your support. Happy holidays from the Toronto Caribbean newspaper. Available at your favorite Caribbean location or online at torontocaribbean.com.
And we're back with the gloves are off, and I'm here with, I can't say doctor anymore, Sachin Patel, who is a practitioner and of natural medicine. Would that be
functional medicine?
Functional
coach,
medicine.
yeah.
Okay, I got to remember that. Who is an author as well. And just before we went to break, we were just talking about the difference between functional medicine and the typical medicine that they actually give out. Totally beyond me. So I'm gonna let him do the talking because he sounds like he knows what he's talking about. So
Sure. So just to clarify, there's no good and bad medicine.
Yeah.
There's the right application of the right medicine. So my approach is not to say that I have a better model than somebody else, because there's a time and place for everything. There's a time and place for medication, there's a time and place for surgery, there's a time and place for all the interventions that are out there. But our model is working on addressing more chronic illnesses, and these are illnesses that are essentially created either usually unknowingly by the patient, by their environment, by the stressors, by their nutritional strategy, by a variety of different confounding factors. It could even be, something in the subconscious mind that's creating a distorted, a pattern, and that's creating chronic stress for somebody. So what we believe that's different, I guess, in the conventional model is we believe the body never makes mistakes.
Okay.
And so fundamentally, that's going to take on a completely different approach. If somebody were to come to me as a patient and they were to say, doc, I have high blood pressure, right? The typical approach in our conventional model would be, okay, well, we're just going to get that blood pressure down and we're not going to ask too many questions, right? And if the number goes down in the next 4 weeks, we're doing our job. They don't ask about the consequences of that. The assumption is that the body doesn't know what it's doing and it's making a mistake. Okay, so when you start with that premise, it changes the behavior because your belief system is different. And then what happens is, because the body is intelligent and because it requires high blood pressure, that's why it raised blood pressure in the first place, it will find a different way to raise blood pressure. Okay, so this is why the body actually has 3 different ways it can raise blood pressure. So it finds a different pathway, and then people go on a different medication. Okay, and then it finds a different pathway, so then they go on a third medication. And then the body keeps trying harder and harder and harder. And in order for it to be able to do that, it has to make more cholesterol. It has to make other hormones and other, chemicals to increase the output, right? So it's almost like putting tape on a baby's mouth instead of asking, why is the baby crying in the first place?
For sure.
Now, if you start with the premise that the body is smart, then you ask different questions. So if somebody were to come to me and say they have high blood pressure, I would ask them, what is your stress like? What is your nutrition like? What time do you go to bed? What time do you wake up? Do you love your job? Right? Do you have anger issues that are bubbling up inside of you? Because that's going to raise your blood pressure. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to have those things. And then what I tell them is, congratulations, your body is working exactly the way it's supposed to be working. Because if you had these problems and your blood pressure was normal, that would not be good. Or if your blood pressure was low, that would not be good either. Your body requires high blood pressure in order for it to be able to deal with the circumstances that you're under. And so what we start doing then is unraveling why this is manifesting. We start unraveling, where's the stress coming from? What are the nutrient deficiencies? What time do we need to go to bed, right? Maybe we find a different job that isn't stressing you out so much. Maybe there's an issue with a subconscious program or pattern that's causing you to have excessive stress in normal circumstances because, there's this pattern that needs to be shattered. So we start with the premise the body's smart, and then we go to the root cause. We go upstream of the problem. Instead of creating new problems that the body has to deal with downstream, we go further upstream so that not only does that blood pressure go down, but other things that we're not measuring start to normalize as well, right?
Okay.
If somebody's got high blood pressure, that's not the only thing they have. If somebody has diabetes, that's not the only thing they have. People get named things for convenience, right? Because we could fill out a form. But you can never develop any disease in isolation. which is actually a good thing. If you cannot develop any disease in isolation, what the opposite of that is true, which is you can heal every organ, systemically at the same time. So if we realize this, the same blood goes everywhere. So the same blood that is destroying, let's say, somebody's kidneys or somebody's heart or cardiovascular system, that same blood goes to every single organ, which means that every single organ to varying degrees is being compromised. It's going to show up first in some places versus others. It might show up, in the thyroid before it shows up in the heart or in the brain or in the gut, but it's going to show up everywhere eventually. When you get a diagnosis, you essentially label that person and you put blinders on. So now every problem they come in with is associated with that diagnosis. And that's really not accurate because the same blood, again, is going everywhere. Now, we can leverage this because if we can turn the blood into a healing elixir and put the right nutrition into it, put the right emotion into it, put the right chemistry into it, now every organ can be healed as well. So there's an advantage to, having blood that goes everywhere, but there's also obviously a disadvantage to having blood that goes everywhere because we never develop disease in isolation, but the beautiful thing is we never heal in isolation either. So our system is set up to try to heal one organ at a time. And that doesn't work. It just simply doesn't work. And we're seeing that over and over again.
And I know you were saying, too, in the interview I was watching this morning, you were saying that you usually get patients when it's like when they're broken instead of actually coming in where you can maintain and help them. To an entrepreneur, to a business owner, essentially, like we really push ourselves to the limits all the time. And a lot of things that you were just talking about is like an everyday life for us, right? You had mentioned also in the interview that I was watching about setting goals and the importance behind it and the actual chemistry that happens because of it. And there was one thing that you were talking about, which was dopamines. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Sure. So dopamine, just an easy way to remember it, is what we call the motivation molecule. And so dopamine is what gets us up in the morning. It's what gets us to get up off of our chair and actually go get that cup of water or go to the gym or go shopping or whatever it is that we need to get done. It's the same chemical that makes us feel rewarded as well. So we feel good about actually getting it done, right? And so dopamine is also technically known as a catecholamine. So it's produced when we're under stress, and then it breaks down into it breaks down into other catecholamines like adrenaline and noradrenaline.
Okay.
So epinephrine and norepinephrine. So these are our fight or flight neurotransmitters. So if we're constantly in fight or flight, the way that we make these fight or flight neurotransmitters and chemicals is from dopamine. So people who are in fight or flight will often lose motivation. They'll lose their sense of reward. They'll feel angry. They'll, so that's one thing that can happen potentially. Now, dopamine is what makes us feel, inspired to do something. It helps us stay focused on the task, and then it also helps us feel rewarded when we actually finish the task. And that's important for solidifying a habit or a behavior. So if somebody's low in dopamine, what we'll typically find is a few characteristics. They might feel hopeless. They might feel sad. They might not feel like starting things. They might start things and only get them half done. They might have a bunch of unfinished projects laying around. They might start things, get them done, but they don't feel rewarded by them, so then they sabotage themselves. They might crave chocolate because chocolate has a compound in it.
I had that written down. I was going to ask you.
Chocolate has a compound in it called PEA, which looks very similar to dopamine. And so some people will actually crave chocolate because they have a dopamine deficiency. Other people might also exhibit addictive behaviors. Pornography, cigarette smoking, smoking pot, cocaine, gambling. These are things that give the body a quick hit of dopamine.
Okay.
So it basically gives you the reward without putting any effort into it, right?
So Jordan, stay off of those sites.
And so what ends up happening is when people have low dopamine, they tend to have also addictive behaviors. There's a few things that can cause low dopamine. One is poor nutrition.
Okay.
Because you actually need amino acids, particularly in this case tyrosine, in order to make dopamine. So it's like building furniture. If you don't have all the parts, you can't build the furniture. No matter how good the instructions are, you need all the parts. So we need adequate amount of protein intake, and we also need the ability to digest that protein so that we can break it into its amino acids. And then we need the ability to absorb the amino acid, and that requires proper blood sugar balance. It requires healthy digestion. We also require iron to make dopamine, and we require B6. And B6 is a B vitamin that's often depleted in people who have chronic stress. So people who have low B6 will also develop low dopamine levels, and so it can potentially compound the problem. So good nutrition is important, sleep is important, controlling inflammation is important. And what we find is that we can quantify this through lab testing. So we can give patients a urine test to see if their dopamine breakdown is on the high side or on the low side. And then we can actually provide neurotransmitter support to provide the precursors that that person needs in order to make dopamine. So if somebody who's listening to this is feeling a lack of motivation, if they've got a bunch of unfinished projects, if they're always kind of starting and stopping weight loss initiatives or health initiatives, or if they lose 20 pounds and their friends are more excited for them than they are excited for themselves, that's usually another sign, because if we don't feel rewarded doing something, we stop doing it.
For sure.
So, the impact that positive news has on us matters, and then it solidifies a behavior. Sometimes people will turn to food because food will raise dopamine levels. So if somebody somebody loses 20 pounds and the first thing they want to do is have a cheat meal, right? We know that they have a dopamine problem.
Okay.
So, if you felt rewarded by the fact that you lost 20 pounds, you wouldn't want another huge dopamine hit to try to, try to feel rewarded or to feel that you accomplished something. So we see this a lot in entrepreneurs. In fact, many entrepreneurs are recovering addicts. And so what they've done is they've taken other sources of dopamine, right, that they used to perhaps partake in. So it could be alcohol, it could be smoking, it could be gambling, it could be a variety of different things, usually risky behaviors. And now they found a legal way, if you will, and a healthy way, potentially, to increase dopamine levels, because when you do the work in business and you earn an income, that's a rewarding feeling. So when you survey really, really successful entrepreneurs, many of them are recovering addicts. And it's because they don't have enough dopamine. And one of the things that I'm doing in an upcoming book that I'm releasing is researching if there's a genetic predisposition to how fast somebody breaks down dopamine, and how we know that there's a genetic predisposition to how fast somebody breaks down dopamine, but to test successful entrepreneurs to see if they possess that same genetic trait where they break down dopamine very quickly and basically set themselves up to be addicts who then turn into business owners.
Now, can this affect females more than males, or is this something that's like everybody? It's really interesting because this can affect anyone, and we see this affecting women a lot. I want to say more. The majority of the people in our practice are women, so we have a skewed population, but women generally never feel rewarded because they are very undervalued and very underappreciated. And that sense of appreciation is important for that reward neurotransmitter hit to take place. And so we're seeing a lot of women turning to alcoholism, smoking, addictive behaviors like that, because they're not feeling that reward elsewhere in their life. Usually women, unfortunately, I love women just as much as everyone else does, but they're just unfortunately taken advantage of in our society. For sure.
So I think that impacts them emotionally, as well as neurochemically as well.
For sure. Sachin, we got to take a quick break. I know we're like mid-sentence of what's going on here. We'll be right back.
Are you retiring smart? Make your home's equity work for you. With your home's equity and our 30 years of experience, the Retire Smart Properties team can help you achieve the quality of life you've always wanted. Our services are 360 degrees. We'll give you advice, take care of staging and selling, and help you find the perfect home and community to transition to. It's time to enjoy the retirement lifestyle you deserve. Visit our website today to learn how you can use your home to retire comfortably. The Retire Smart Properties team, powered by RE/MAX West.
And we're back with The Gloves Are Off. And if you're just tuning in, we are sitting down with Sachin Patel, who is a doctor of functional medicine. I'm still alternative, sorry. And if you're just tuning in, we are literally talking about a subject that many entrepreneurs don't actually pay attention to because we're always focused on the result. And listening to Dr. Patel so far, it's actually the result that we're looking for because it creates dopamines. And it's actually a big thing, and I'm finding that the time is just flying, so I'm hoping that you enjoy this. Sachin, I know we finished like mid-sentence and we had to go to break. You were talking about the reward mechanism and the neurotransmitters, and then during break we were talking about the importance of actually getting those rewards. Why don't you let our viewers know, that our entrepreneurs, why it's important to get that stuff?
Sure. So a couple things, we'll talk about a little bit of evolutionary biology, if I think that'll help explain things. So think about our hunter-gatherer ancestors. And in our hunter-gatherer society, you would wake up and there would be men and women living in a community together, living together in a tribe with children, and the men would go off and hunt. Mm-hmm. Now, what men needed was high amounts of dopamine to motivate themselves to actually take that first step and go out and take action. And as we move on an open field, as objects become closer to us, we actually increase dopamine. So our brain has a unique way of rewarding us by, as objects move closer to us, we get this hit of dopamine, so it actually keeps us going. And so this is what enables us to go out there, find that animal, and then we feel rewarded because when you come back with the kill, everyone's celebrating. There's a big party that takes place, a big feast that takes place. The men get their pick of the women, I'm assuming. And now when you come home, right?
Sounds like a good party.
Well, human beings know how to party, right? So what ends up happening now when you come home after a long week, right? You've busted your butt. You've put it all on the line. You've woken up every morning. You come home. It's Friday. You got to take out the trash, right? You don't get a big hug and a kiss. You don't get a reward. The check that you got this week was the same check that you got last week, right? So we break this reward system and we never really celebrate it. So what do people do? They wait for the weekend and then they get trashed because alcohol raises dopamine, right? Drugs raise dopamine. So they don't feel rewarded in the actual behaviors that they're spending their life doing. So they look for reward elsewhere, right? And usually the things that raise dopamine very quickly also have some sort of negative consequence to them as well. Gratitude is another way to raise dopamine because it raises awareness and appreciation. But if you think about our typical man or woman who comes home, there's really no reward for coming home, right? When you come home, there's more work to do, right? When you get that paycheck every week, it's the same paycheck every week, right? No matter how hard you worked. And this is where we have to understand this so that we can properly reward ourselves. We have to set goals, and then when we hit those goals, somehow reward ourselves. And I use retail therapy. Okay, so I buy gadgets and I buy clothes, and I'm very like I'm not wasteful. I use everything that I buy, but I set goals. So I don't just go out and buy something just for the hell of it, right? Just because of any other reason except I accomplish my goal. And so some people might use different types of therapies. They might reward themselves with a massage, or they might reward themselves with going to the movies, or they might reward themselves by taking their spouse on a nice date with each other. So find what works for you that doesn't harm you and doesn't harm somebody else. Like some people will, like we mentioned earlier, will lose 20 pounds and then they'll go have a cheap meal, right? And that sabotages them. So make sure the reward isn't sabotaging you from what the main objective or the goal is. So this is why reward is extremely important. This is why the reward system in people is broken, as for many of the reasons that I explained. And so people need to find some way of acknowledging their accomplishments. A big thing too is actually love languages. Knowing your love language. I'm sure some of you might be familiar with this.
The book.
It's a great book. Yep. And what he talks about in this book is Gary Chapman he talks about knowing your spouses and your loved ones' love languages so you know how to reward them, Okay, so my love language is physical touch and words of affirmation. My wife, her love language is quality time and acts of service. So if I want to get on her good side, I've got to take out the trash and do the dishes. Okay, if she wants to get on my good side, she's got to, you know, say nice things about me and maybe give me a hug and a kiss once in a while. So we're going to fill up each other's reward buckets slightly differently. And so knowing that about your partner is extremely important, because if I come home after a long week, you know, it's going to go down very differently if the first thing she says to me is, "Hey, honey, I'm glad you're home. Can you take out the garbage?" versus, "Hey, I'm glad you're home. Let me give you a big hug." Right?
Yeah,
So that is going to create a different chemistry in my body, right?
Okay.
And a different chemistry in her body as well. So how we engage with other people also fulfills different elements of what we feel our inner child essentially needs to be rewarded with.
Wow. You had mentioned too the importance of knowing where you want to go and having a bigger than life goal.
Yeah, so you have to know where you want to go, right? You have to know which mountain you want to climb. You're not going to know what each step is going to look like, right? Because you can't see that far up the mountain, and you've got to be able to maneuver. The conditions might change when you get there based on what they look like now, but you have to know which summit you're climbing, right? Which peak you're going to go up to, and be open to the fact that even might change, right? And you know, I like shooting for bigger goals because you assemble a bigger team, right? When you start thinking of a goal that's bigger than yourself, you start thinking about legacy. You start thinking about, you know, is this business for me or is it for a greater good? And when it's for a greater good, you bring on people that are willing to work with you on that mission. If it's just about you as the entrepreneur and your business or your mission dies with you, then it's great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. There's lots of people that are doing great work in that capacity. But the way I look at goal setting is, I want it, if I'm going to put my all into it, I want it to live on way past when I'm gone, right? And then you just bring on a whole different team of people that are, you know, that are going to support you in that mission, because it's part of their mission to have a bigger than life goal for themselves as well.
For sure, for sure. I know a lot of entrepreneurs that are watching right now. They're probably identifying with a lot of the symptoms you've talked about, a lot of the scenarios and stuff like that. As an entrepreneur, a lot of us also don't have healthcare coverage. What are some of the things that we can do to first off get tested and maybe move forward with treatment, or even, you know, utilizing some, because we're always looking for hacks. We're always looking to get that extra energy, that be able to stay up an extra hour or two, you know, and listening to the stuff that you're talking about and knowing basically our own chemistry is probably one of the biggest hacks that we can have. So what should they do next?
Well, I think first and foremost, people need to change this idea that the more you work, the more you get done. Because essentially what we do when we come to that conclusion that the harder I work, the more work gets done, then you're limiting possibility, right? There's definitely a shift from the masculine energy to the feminine energy. And in the feminine energy, things get done for you, okay? So you can do less.
Back up.
Yeah.
Okay, the masculine versus the feminine. So if we shift to the feminine, more gets done?
More gets done. Think about a woman, how much work she can get done in a short period of time, right? So the feminine energy in entrepreneurship is not working harder,
okay,
but letting the kind of the universe work for you, right? And allowing for serendipity, allowing for, you know, things to happen for you instead of you constantly doing things, okay? And I guess the difference would be the difference between thinking of Gary Vaynerchuk as an entrepreneur and then thinking of someone like Wayne Dyer as an entrepreneur, right? One is like go, get it, don't sleep, you know, and almost in an insulting way. And the other person is let go and let God, right? And things get done. The right people come into your life. The right circumstances come into your life. That project that if you were to work on yourself, or the circumstances to create that outcome, if you were to work on yourself, might require thousands of hours to have happen for you.
Okay.
Right? So I'll give you an example. Just this morning, I was invited to co-host a television series. So if I went about this the masculine way, it would have been, how do I send a million emails to a million studios and producers and put together a team and do all this stuff? If I just know what I want, and I create an energy in myself, and I create a knowing in myself that when that opportunity can present itself, I will be ready to take it, then it will present itself, right? So there's a few different ways to go at this. So when you play with the masculine energy, then it's go, 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 no sleep. Sleep is for the weak, right? And one of the things that you need to make dopamine is you need to actually be able to sleep, right? So the new hack for entrepreneurs is sleep, okay? It's not how can I stay up an hour longer, it's how can I organize my life and organize my focus and be laser focused on what I need to get done so I can actually go to bed 2 hours earlier. So my definition of success is not how late an entrepreneur stays up, it's how early they actually go to bed. So I'm in bed 3 to 4 nights a week at 8 o'clock.
Really?
And I wake up at 4 though, but I'm in bed really, really early because that's when our brain and body heals, right? So now, and this is a feminine energy, right? Rest is a feminine energy, whereas drive is a male energy. So we're seeing this in high-level entrepreneurs. Like I just came back from a mastermind where everyone there is extremely successful, and all of them were looking for ways to improve their sleep, to improve their focus, to improve how to get stuff done in the shortest period of time with the least amount of work, right? And that's all feminine energy.
Wow. So Jordan, you got to bring out your femininity. We're gonna stop for a quick break. We'll be right back.
This holiday season, be sure to pick up your copy of the Toronto Caribbean newspaper and check out all the specials from local businesses right here in our community. Help build a bigger, better, and stronger community with your support. Happy holidays from the Toronto Caribbean newspaper. Available at your favorite Caribbean location or online at torontocaribbean.com.
And welcome back. If you're just tuning in, you're tuned in to The Gloves Are Off with myself, Grant Browning, and I have Sachin Patel, who is a natural, I keep messing this up.
I'll do it. I'm a functional medicine success coach. Yeah.
I just think natural. So and we've been talking the whole show basically on the importance of building goals and what it actually does chemically for your brain and your body. Talking about dopamines and what actually happens there. Just before we went to break, I know I'd asked the question, how can entrepreneurs, because a lot of them are identifying with this, what's their next step? How can they actually maybe either go get tested or start learning more about this stuff?
Well, I would say the first thing, our mission at Living Proof is to keep people out of our office. Mm-hmm. So that is our first and foremost objective. So what I would tell anyone who's watching this is I've created a free 30-day program. It's called 30in30.org. So if you go to 30in30.org, you can get a free 30-day program. And in that, I give my 30 best tips. So I give you 30 ways to stay out of my practice. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to take ownership over your health, because in order for you to be successful working with somebody in our office, you have to have that willingness to take ownership. In our traditional medical model, we kind of delegate our health to our practitioner, kind of like we delegate our taxes to our accountant.
Yep.
In our office, it's going to be different. We're going to delegate the responsibility of health back to the patient, and that patient has to be willing. So in order for you to work with us, you have to be willing to make some changes, but you also have to be willing to do the work and also see value in your health, right? I find that the only reason people don't work with us is because they don't see enough value in their own health. Okay. And unfortunately, we live in a society where prevention doesn't really sell. It's not a strong enough initiative. That's why most Canadians have very little retirement savings, right? They had 65 years to save and they didn't save anything, like the majority of them. And that's just the society that we live in. It's just the way we've been conditioned to think. And we think about the same way about our health. We think that, oh, I'm going to live it up, get sick, and then somebody else is going to fix me, right? And obviously that's not working out. I mean, just ask some of our parents and grandparents, you know, how that plan worked out for them and how it's working out for our future generations. It's really not. So one of the things that you have to do is first value your health. You have to deeply value your health. And if you're an entrepreneur, what you have to realize is if your health is a 6 out of 10, your business is a 6 or less. Right? It can't, nothing that you do or nothing that you put your hands in can be operating at a level higher than the level of your health. So if your health is an 8, your business can only be an 8, right? And here's the thing, it goes up exponentially. So it's not that, you know, if your health is an 8 and it goes up to a 10, your business only goes up 25%. It can go up 100% or 100x because you have more clarity, you have more drive, you have feminine energy working for you, right? You have all these serendipitous things happening because you're operating from the right frequency and the right mindset and the right chemistry. It's amazing what the capabilities of the human mind are, and we just haven't even leveraged it. And I know it's hard to cover all these things, and we're bouncing kind of all over the place. So it's hard to cover all these things in such a short period of time. But the greatest, capability that we have is to create our reality. And we will put money where we see value, right? People will spend $80,000 and go 7 years in debt on a car. People will pay their real estate agent tens of thousands of dollars to put them in debt for the next 30 years.
But they'll question your health.
But they won't invest in themselves. And, here's the thing. Most of the investments we've made in ourselves have actually not been good investments. Like, people will spend thousands of dollars and go to university and use very little of the knowledge that they learn, right? They will spend thousands of dollars on, a car, and that car is worthless after 7 years, right? So there's all these investments that we make where the return on the investment is actually very poor, right? And when we invest in our health, the return on the investment is actually huge. It's exponential, and compared to what we invest. So when you come work with us, we're going to teach you tools and strategies and tips and interventions that not only benefit you, but they benefit your future generations, they benefit your wife, they benefit your children, they benefit your grandchildren, because we're going to teach you timeless principles of how to take care of your health. And so the goal, the objective is to keep you out of our office, but if you do come in, you're going to get the best testing, you're going to get deep questions, deep inquisition into how we can optimize your health, and we're going to teach you how to become your own best doctor. And then you can hopefully teach that to other members of your family and members of your community. Because if we understand the crisis that healthcare is in right now, it's not going to happen by going to doctors. It's not going to happen by even going to holistic doctors. There aren't enough doctors to fix a problem that the public itself is creating because of the misinformation that's being, basically peddled to them through commercials and government interests and lobbies and all this junk. Like, we were talking about this before. Basically, the best healthcare strategy is to do the exact opposite of what the current healthcare strategy is doing. It's very easy. People say, oh, health is so complicated. No, just do the exact opposite of what you're being told to do. Look at the food pyramid, turn it upside down, right? Okay. Instead of treating symptoms, treat the root cause, right? Instead of treating a diagnosis, look the person in the eye and talk to them and figure out what's going on in their life. Instead of assuming the body's making a mistake, realize that the body's intelligent and it's infinitely capable. Instead of assuming people are lazy and they don't want to take action, assume they do want to take action. That's why they're sitting in your office, right? Assume that, everything that we're doing in our current system is designed to strip power away from you. So when people go to the doctor, what does the doctor say? Oh, it's your age, right? Well, you can't do anything about that. Oh, it's your genetics. Well, you can't do anything about that. And we're finding more and more that that's all BS, right? These are all lies that are perpetuated on people so that it keeps them powerless, right? They can't do anything about it, but hey, take this poison and somehow it's going to make you healthy.
That's where the money is too, though.
Well, I believe there's money in wellness. I believe people are willing to pay more to be healthy than they are to recover from illness.
For sure.
Right? It's really just a mindset, right? Because we see where people spend their money, right? You can tell what somebody's values are based on where they spend their money. And it's just a values proposition. It's not a financial proposition. People might say, oh, like being healthy is expensive. Well, so is living longer, right? So what are you going to do about that, right? If somebody tries to get you healthy, they're not going to save you money. They're going to help you do the most expensive thing, live another 20 years. That might mean 20 to 60 more vacations. That might mean more birthday gifts that you've got to give people. It might mean more mortgage payments. It might mean a cell phone bill for another 20 years.
For some people, they don't want that.
Well, and they don't come to our office.
And
right?
what's that saying? Jim Rohn says, if you don't pay attention to your health, there was another part to it. It was
eventually goes away.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's true. I know you brought your books. Let's talk about that quickly. Also, is there any podcast or any type of blog that you do that people can maybe go and get more information on?
Well, the best thing you can do is go to the 30and30.org, but you can also go to becomeproof.com. And that's the website for our institute. And we have lots of blog articles, videos that we share there. People can also go to LPI Community. And this is where we have our Facebook community. We've got several thousand people in that group, and you can post questions. You have a collective group of people that can answer them for you. We do Facebook Lives in there periodic, like I do them every week. This is my Facebook Live today that'll be shared in that group. So we share lots of content in there. We answer questions, and it's a great way to interact with other like-minded people. I think that's also important. We didn't get into that too much, but who you hang out with matters tremendously. Yep.
Absolutely. How can we follow you? Get in contact with you.
So you can follow me at, you can follow us on the group that I mentioned, LPI Community. You can go to 30and30.org and register there. That's probably the best two places that you can go. And then you can also go to, you can follow me on Facebook, Sachin Patel. Don't add me as a friend because I've reached the max and I can't add you back. So I don't want you to feel offended or sad if I can't add you back, but follow me and you can stay attuned to some of the things that we're doing.
Awesome. Sachin, I want to thank you so much for the time you've taken. I have learned tons. I think I've barely spoken, and it's just because I'm taking notes as we're going as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Make sure if you want to get in contact with Sachin, all his information is below the video as well in the comment area. If you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the comment area. We'll make sure that we get them to Sachin and we can get them answered for you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And until next week, guys, take care.